Hi, and welcome back to my channel, Britt's Book Club. If you're new here, this is not our normal formatted video, but I thought today, in order to talk about my 2020 reads, it might be fun to kind of do them in this tier ranking. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change all of these categories, and the first will be 5 stars. Next, we'll have 4 stars and 3 stars. I actually didn't rank anything below 3 stars this year with the books that I read in 2020, so that's kind of impressive, and I can stop right there. So my next category is instead going to be DNF'd books. So these books are going to be books that I started at some point during the year, but for whatever reason, I put it back down and I never picked it back up, and so I have yet to finish this book. It doesn't mean that I won't ever come back and finish it. It just means that I have not finished it as of yet, even though I started it in this year. And the very last category is still reading. So these are books that I picked up this year that I am still reading that I hope to have done before 2020 ends. And there are a couple of them on this list. I wanted this list to be as exhaustive as possible so I could show you kind of the spectrum of what I read this year, between what I picked up and started to read and even things that I finished that maybe you didn't know I had read. So cool. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into the list. Okay, so our first book is actually going to be Eye of the World, the first book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. So this book, I started the Wheel of Time series this year because I know that there is a TV show that's being made on Amazon Prime, and this book series means a lot to someone who's very special to me, and so I wanted to try to, the book is always better or whatever before the TV show comes out. So this is the first book in that book series. I have been reading a lot of that book series, just so you'll see the first 7 books of that series here on this list today. But for Eye of the World, the very first book, I actually gave it 4 stars. So I didn't give it 5 stars, I gave it 4 stars. I do have a review video for that, so if you're interested, I'll link that and you can go watch it. The next book is Jade City. Jade City is a book I'm really excited about. It has a lot of elements that normally are very intriguing to me that I really enjoy reading about. I am still reading it though. So I did start Jade City this year and I have yet to finish it. I just had a lot of other things kind of get in the way of finishing Jade City, and that pretty much goes for all of the books in this category. But yeah. So my next pick is The Poppy War. So The Poppy War was a book that I read this year because it was all over booktube. Everyone was raving about it. Everyone said it was so good. And so I was like, hey, I'll read that. And I listened to the audiobook of it and I loved it. So I gave it 5 stars. I am struggling to get through book 2. I have book 2. I'm also listening to it as an audiobook. And so that's actually the Dragon Republic that's here. And I am still reading the Dragon Republic right now. So there's that one. The next book on the list is The Great Hunt. This is book 2 in the Wheel of Time series. So this book is actually the book where I realized that I was going to enjoy the Wheel of Time and that I did want to continue reading it. So I gave it 5 stars. So far, I don't know if The Great Hunt or one of the other Wheel of Time books is my favorite. It definitely takes what you thought was going on with the series in book 1 and kind of flips everything on its head. So, In an Absent Dream. So this is book 4 of the Wayward Children series, and I am still reading this. So I started the Wayward Children series really this year. So the rest of the first 3 books are on this list. In order, they're portal fantasy, magical realism, and the main characters are children or teenagers usually, and it's a very interesting world. So the next book is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Warbreaker was one of the Sanderson novels in the Cosmere that I had not read yet this year. And Warbreaker is one of the ones that people always recommend it. They always give it as a starting place for Sanderson novels. and I had not read it yet. So I read it this year at the very beginning of the year. I gave it 5 stars. It might be one of my favorite Sanderson Cosmere books. The magic system is just so cool. It's definitely a book I recommend for people who are newer to fantasy to read. So it's a good book overall. Okay, so the next book is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. So when I was in high school and in middle school is when the big Twilight craze was exploding throughout teenage girls. So I was definitely part of the Twilight craze. And in fact, I was Team Edward. So I read all 4 of the Twilight books when I was in high school. I liked them. I like, there's whatever. And so when Midnight Sun was coming out this year, you know, I kind of was like, well, I'll give that a shot. Because I did like Edward, even though he's kind of creepy, when I was in high school, and it was nice to like get another experience of this world. Stephanie Meyer, even though her writing is not like the best out there, she is still very good at like writing at a pace that keeps you engaged in the book. So Midnight Sun was like 500 and something pages, but I read it in like 2 days because the pacing was very quick. Maybe it was because the story was familiar, I don't know, but still I gave it 3 stars. It was, but all in all, I mean, you could tell Stephanie Meyer's writing had improved, and the book itself wasn't bad. It wasn't like a bad book. It was just, it had all the same problems that Twilight did, just maybe some of those issues that were more specific to the style of writing were fixed because Stephanie Meyer has grown as a writer. So honestly, if you were a Twilight fan, I do recommend that you read it because it was kind of a nice little blast from the past. So the next book is Gardens of the Moon. This is the first book in Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is another big fantasy book series. I've actually not started Malazan, obviously, because the first book is here on this list. And this is the first book that goes on the DNF'd category. So I started listening to the audiobook, I think, for this very first book for Gardens of the Moon. And I think I didn't even finish the prologue, and I was very confused. So I kind of realized that Malazan is probably a book series that I'll need to read a physical copy of so that I can really be paying attention to each individual word and like know what people are saying and be able to almost take notes, like kind of like I do with Wheel of Time, in order to really understand what's going on. And so I can't listen to the audiobook and do that as easily. So I'm going to have to get a physical copy of these books in order to read them. And now I kind of want to wait to start something like Malazan until I'm done with Wheel of Time, because those are both some pretty chunky, long book series, and I like kind of want, maybe might want a break after Wheel of Time before starting another big book series like that, and certainly don't want to read them at the same time. So those are kind of on hold right now. The next book is Peace and Turmoil by Elliot Brooks. I've talked about this book a couple of times in a few videos. I gave it 4 stars. It's a great debut novel by someone who's here on booktube, and you know, I thought it was great. It has a talking dragon, which I always really love when there's that kind of relationship between a main character and an animal, whether it be a wolf or a dragon or something else. So I'm here for it. I liked it. I think it deserved 4 stars. A Crown of Swords. Okay, so I am actually still reading A Crown of Swords right now as of filming. I hope to have that done by next week because I want to do a review of it next week. And then after that, I want to do some fun videos on being halfway done with the Wheel of Time series. Rhythm of War got in the way of A Crown of Swords. I think I would have already been done with it if Rhythm of War hadn't come out pretty recently. But yes, so I'm still reading that as of right now. Down Among the Sticks and Bones. So this is book 2 in the Wayward Children series, which I already talked about. I'm currently reading book 4. This was book 2. Book 2 was really good. I really liked it. Book 1 had like a very interesting premise and it was very touching. But book 2 kind of focused in on some characters introduced in book 1 who I really liked. So it was nice to kind of get more exploration of the world and see those characters and kind of learn more about them, even though I'm not like super into magical realism or portal fantasy. And that's kind of definitely what these books are like. But I gave Down Among Sticks and Bones, the Sticks and Bones 5 stars because it was very good. The next book is Red Rising. So Red Rising is another book that I saw all over booktube that I was kind of like, oh, maybe that sounds like something I would like. I should probably read it. Lots of people are talking about how good it is. And I never finished it. It's another one that I started the audiobook of, and like I was interested in it. I listened to a few chapters, but then I don't know what happened with it. I just kind of stopped listening to it in favor of listening to other audiobooks. So that, like, I intend to finish Red Rising. I definitely want to. I've heard lots of good things about it and lots of good things about the book series. It's just, it wasn't the right time to read it, I think, when I was trying to read it. The next book is Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. So this is book 3.5 in the Stormlight Archive. If you're a Sanderson fan, a Sander fan, you're familiar with this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was fantastic. Some very plot relevant stuff and like universe relevant stuff in it. Not required to read it before you read Rhythm of War, but it's still so good. And I almost like Sanderson's pacing in these novellas better than in the big books, but maybe I'm just a little biased there. The next book is Perdido Street Station. So this is a book that was recommended to me by one of my friends as kind of like a fantasy that's very unique, that has a very unique world, a very unique premise, unique races, and everything like that. And this was another one that I think I started reading it, and I didn't get very far into it before I just lost interest in it, and I need to pick it back up. So I think this is another one where like the timing of it was kind of hard for me, that it just something about the timing didn't work. And so it's something that I would be willing to try again because I'm kind of one of those people that like, even if I put a book down, I'll usually go back to it, like, because I don't really like leaving things unfinished. So I will go back to those books that I started. It's just maybe at a better feeling time or what have you. Okay, so the next book is Rhythm of War, and I'm ashamed to say that I'm still reading Rhythm of War right now. I just made the halfway mark last night or the night before. I'm just having so much trouble finishing it. It's so long. The pacing is a little bit slower now because there's almost like an opposite pacing structure compared to Sanderson's previous novels, where, you know, it's almost like it's very slow at the beginning and then everything kind of hits breakneck speed toward the end. This book feels like it was the reverse. So the beginning like is very fast and you get through it and a lot is happening, and now I'm kind of in a spot where it has slowed down quite a bit, and so I am trying to get through that. All right, and so the next book is The Dragon Reborn. So this is book 3 in the Wheel of Time series, The Dragon Reborn. I really liked it, but I did give it 4 stars. So The Great Hunt, like, it really stood out for me, and then The Dragon Reborn was good, but it wasn't as good as The Great Hunt. Fires of Heaven. So this is book 5 of the Wheel of Time series, and The Fires of Heaven I did give 5 stars. It was another one that I really enjoyed. The Priory of the Orange Tree. Okay, so this book, I've actually both listened to the audiobook and read a little bit of the ebook. I have both versions of it so I can go back and forth. And I was making a lot of progress in it toward the beginning of the year, and then I stopped reading it, and I tried picking it back up like a month or 2 ago, but I just haven't been able to get back into it. But it is one that I definitely want to finish. It has a very interesting premise. I'm very invested in the story. It's just, I started reading it, and then other things as they started coming out, I was more interested in finishing. The next book is The Republic of Thieves. This is book 3 in the Gentleman Bastard series. That was a series I actually started last year, and so I got all caught up this year with this book, with The Republic of Thieves. I know a lot of people really love the first book, were okay with the second book, and then didn't really like this book quite as much. But I actually liked this book quite a bit, and I gave it 5 stars, which is kind of a controversial opinion, I think. I think a lot of people gave it less than they gave the first and second book. I really like Sabbatha, and so maybe that is what kind of tipped the edge for me when it came to this book. because I think that's where the divide usually comes, is between people who like Sabitha and who don't. She's kind of an interesting character. She's not like just boom likable. And so I think that plays into it. And then it's a lot of politics, whereas the second book was very piratey feeling, and the first book is just like a fun romp. The next book is Lord of Chaos. So this is the most recent Wheel of Time book that I have finished. It is book 6. I really liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I think I gave it... yes, I gave it 4 stars. So I kind of have been having this situation with the Wheel of Time books where, like, one book I'll be like, well, this is okay, and then the next book will be fantastic, and then I'll get another okay book, and then maybe 2 fantastic books, and then another okay book. And I'll probably continue to have that cycle with them. I haven't had a bad one yet, like one where I've, like, absolutely not liked it. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I have kind of been going a little back and forth in my opinion of the books themselves. So I'm kind of hoping that Crown of Swords is going to be another one that I really like. So the next book is Court of Thorn and Roses. So I used to read a lot of YA. I don't really care about like book labels too much. Like obviously I prefer the fantasy genre. But when it comes to whether or not something is marketed towards young adult or adult, I don't really care either way. I think there's enjoyable and unenjoyable stories regardless of those labels in both sections. And I've never read anything by Sarah J. Maas. And so I've seen a lot of good and bad things. And so I just thought I would give this one a try. So I just started reading Court of Thorn and Roses. We'll see how far I get with it and if I enjoy it. I did read like the Sookie Stackhouse book series. And again, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I have read the Twilight series. So I'm kind of familiar with this book type, if I'm understanding it correctly. But, you know, I am pretty easy to please, I think, when it comes to books. So I think I might enjoy this book as well. The next book is The Shadow Rising. So The Shadow Rising was another Wheel of Time book that I gave 5 stars. I really, really liked The Shadow Rising. It was a very Perrin-focused book, and Perrin is my favorite character. So I thought it was great. It was fantastic. And yeah, so again, I have dedicated reviews to the Wheel of Time books, so you can go watch those if you're more interested in like spoilery and spoiler-free my thoughts on those books. But yeah, so that was another. Okay, we're almost done. We're getting close to the end. The next book is The Last Wish. So this is a Witcher book. I believe The Last Wish is the first book technically in the series. So when The Witcher TV show on Netflix came out last year, because I had been a pretty staunch Game of Thrones watcher, and that's how I read those books, was I had watched the TV show first and decided I wanted to then read the books. The Witcher, I did the same thing for. I watched the TV show, I thought it kind of seemed interesting. And then I wanted to read the book. So I listened to the first 2 short story collections that are technically part of the series, but they're not like the true novels. And I believe The Last Wish is the first of those. And I liked it. Both The Last Wish and we'll just grab Sword of Destiny, I believe is the other one. Both of those short story collections, I gave 4 stars. They were good for what they were. Like, I really enjoyed the different stories. I enjoyed, like, the fairy tale retellings of some of the myths and how there's a lot of kind of uniquely fantasy stuff in those stories. But I don't know how much I enjoyed, like, the short story format of them. If that ruined the novel length Witcher books for me, because I did start Blood of Elves, but that's a book I put down and have not picked back up since like April or May. I was listening to all of the audiobooks of that series, and I got to, like I said, Blood of Elves, which is the first of the full-length novels that are not the short story collections. and I've not been able to go back to it. So I don't know. Give me some motivation, Witcher fans. Tell me that, and maybe the second season of The Witcher, whenever that comes out, will be the motivation that I need to like get back to reading those books. So the next book is The Rage of Dragons. So this is another book that I saw so much about on booktube that I thought I need to read this. I am still reading it. But I'm not actively reading it, so we'll put it in the DNF for now. It's on my TBR for this. I wanted to read it in December. I don't think I'm going to get to it in December now. But it is something that I am going to get to like as soon as I can. In fact, let's just pop it right to the front there, because I'm very interested in reading and in finishing that. The next book is Blade Runner. It's also, the original title is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I believe is the full original title. I started reading this because I got very interested in cyberpunk for like 5 seconds. And so I thought I wanted to read something that kind of started cyberpunk, and I never finished it. So I need to go back and finish that as well, because that was a good book. It's just sci-fi is not super my thing. I don't read a whole lot of sci-fi. It's mostly fantasy, as you can tell. So I need to go back and like check that out and finish it, because I don't think I had very much left. So the next book is Beneath the Sugar Sky. This is the third book in the Wayward Children series. I gave this one 3 stars. So I was really into the first book, which is Every Heart a Doorway. The very next one, I gave 5 stars. But with Beneath the Sugar Sky, with that one, like, the first book was very touching, even in the main character, Nancy, was very interesting, and her world was very interesting for me. And then book 2 was about these characters in book 1 who were very compelling and mysterious and kind of had like a creepy world. And then in book 3, it's kind of about like this quest through like this sugary world, and the main character is a character that we haven't seen before, so we're not really invested in her as much as we are in some of the other characters that may have shined better as the main characters. So I didn't like it quite as much as the other 2. And then my final pick or read of 2020 is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. And so this was my first YA Sanderson novel. It was also my first venture into like kind of, and Sanderson's, I guess, into sci-fi with his works, and I loved Skyward. I loved it. I thought it was so good. It was one of the best books I read. And just the character progression in Skyward was fantastic. So I loved that book. So these were my 2020 reads. These were the books that I have picked up in 2020 and either didn't finish or gave some kind of star rating between 3 and 5, or am still reading and hopefully might finish before the end of the year. So thank you for tuning in and watching this video. I hope that you had a good time kind of laughing along with me about the different picks of my books. And if you read any of these books this year, will you tell me down in the comments which was your favorite and what your favorite part of whatever book you read was? Because I actually, looking back on it, I feel like I read so many books when I know that this really isn't that many in the grand scheme of things. And maybe next year, if I do this again, I'll be able to double the amount of books on this list. So thank you so much. I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in another video. Bye-bye!